Red meat causes diabetes. That's essentially what this article is saying based on a study. Let's go into this article a little bit further and get more info. It says people who routinely eat a lot of red meat may be increasing their risk of developing type 2 diabetes, according to a new study. Researchers tracked the eating habits of more than 200,000 people enrolled in long-term health studies for up to 36 years and found that those who regularly consumed a lot of red meat, more than a serving per day, had a significantly higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. All right, so they consider anything more than a serving a day is eating a lot of red meat. So one serving of red meat is 3 ounces. So if you're eating 4 ounces of red meat, that is considered a lot of red meat per day, according to this study. That's the first thing. Okay. So here's the other thing that they talk about. It's difficult to unravel whether the meat itself or some constituent of the meat may explain the increased risk of diabetes. Another possible explanation is that people who consume a lot of red meat may have other things in common that could drive up their risk. For instance, excess body weight is a key risk factor for developing type 2 diabetes. So they say right there, excess body weight is a key risk factor for developing type 2 diabetes. Now, the next thing they say is that it turned out that the participants in the study who consumed high amounts of red meat also had higher body mass indexes. So we're not really doing a study of people that ate red meat, but people that ate red meat and also had high body mass, which means they were overweight. There are people that eat red meat that are not overweight, but apparently those weren't really the participants in this study. Is this study flawed? Also, they say that those people that ate more than one serving of red meat had consumed more calories and were less physically active compared to those who consumed the least amount of red meat. Again, we are lumping things in and saying just because they ate more red meat, that's the problem. But here we say that they ate more and were less active. They ate more in general and were less active than the people that ate less red meat. So the people that ate less red meat were more active. And they go on to say, we found that about half of the excess risk with red meat consumption was explained by excess body weight. So they even go on to say that to prove cause and effect, scientists would need to carry out large randomized controlled trials, the type of research used in drug trials. But when it comes to food intake, these types of studies will never be conducted. In part, that's because they'd be too expensive and it can take decades for food-related diseases such as type 2 diabetes to develop. And they say recruitment would be a Herculean task, since researchers would need thousands of people to volunteer to be randomly assigned to follow a diet where they either indulged in red meat or severely restricted it for many years. Retention would likely be a nightmare. So they make that comment, yet they say that this study was done over 36 years of people eating red meat, eating excess red meat or not eating a lot of red meat. So they're saying that it would be impossible to do this, yet they're saying that that's the basis of this study. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. So looking at the World Health Organization, they say in the past 3 decades, the prevalence of type 2 diabetes has risen dramatically in countries of all incomes. All right, so in the past 3 decades, type 2 diabetes has risen dramatically. But according to the World per capita beef consumption, it has dropped. In fact, per capita beef consumption has slipped steadily for nearly 3 decades. In 1980, the average American consumed 76.4 pounds of beef. That figure had fallen to 53.8 pounds by 2015. So, in this article, this study, they're saying that beef, red meat, increases your risk of type 2 diabetes by more than 50%, right? They're saying that diabetes has risen over the last 30 years. We know that diabetes has risen considerably over the last 30 years. At the same time, the consumption of beef per person has dropped pretty steadily over the last 30 years. This does not add up. I'm not a mathematician, but that does not add up. Here's the other thing about this. I eat beef every day. I eat way more than one serving. I typically have probably close to 8 to 10 servings of beef every day. I've been doing this for over a year and a half. No, it's not 36 years, but even before I did carnivore diet, I still ate quite a bit of beef. And it would probably average to more than 3 ounces per day. It was probably closer to 6 ounces, if not more. Now, granted, I ate other things as well. So you've got to keep that into consideration. But for the last year and a half, it's pretty much just beef, red meat. My A1C is 4.7. My A1C when I started carnivore diet was 4.7. It has not gone up. 4.7 is a pretty good number. You would think if red meat, beef, really causes a 50% increase in likelihood of diabetes, that my A1C should have gone up at least a little bit. 4.7 is like a great number, so it should have gone up. So that again does not add up. Like I said, even if it's only a year and a half, I'm probably having 8 to 10 servings a day of beef. Even before that, for as long as I can remember, for years, I've ate an average of more than 3 ounces, so more than one serving per day of beef. I've always really liked red meat, eating beef. There's just no correlation that I can come up with. Look at the other aspect. They said that people that had ate a lot of beef, ate more than one serving per day, that they tended to be overweight in their study. So they're trying to correlate now that beef causes you to be overweight just because of that. Well, people that are eating a carnivore diet that are just eating beef and they're not eating the carbs are actually losing weight. They're not gaining weight. In some cases, they might be maintaining because they already had, a pretty good body fat percentage and so forth. But if they were overweight going into the carnivore diet, they actually lose weight on the carnivore diet eating beef. I lost a good amount of weight, and now for a while here, I've been pretty much maintaining my weight. There is no correlation that I can find to gaining weight by eating beef. It just doesn't add up. What does add up is when you're eating carbs and you're eating other things. So, sure, the person that's out there eating a burger, that's beef, but they've also got, some sort of bun, they're eating French fries and so forth. Yeah, that's the person that's gaining weight, and that's the person that's higher risk for diabetes. But the problem there is not the red meat, it's the other stuff. It's the carb, it's the ultra processed carbs, it's the sugar. It's just all that stuff. And they're refusing to look at what is really the problem. And I'm sure that the reason why they are refusing to look at that is because of who is funding these studies. So Does red meat really cause diabetes? You know, you're going to have to make that decision up on your own. That's something that you need to make up your own mind on. I know where I stand with it. I do not believe that at all. I think I'm a perfect example. I know many others that are great examples of this as well, that red meat does not cause diabetes. But this, you need to look at this and research the information and make that decision yourself. Don't let these studies that are funded by the sugar industry tell you what is healthy and what's not, and just blanketed take what they tell you. You need to do the research yourself. You need to be an informed person, and you need to advocate for your own health because they are not looking out for you. They are looking out for money, for the almighty dollar.